The very first, Alone in the Dark, is super well known for helping set the stage for the survival horror genre, but back in 1992, it was also taking some pretty interesting strides graphically. Featuring polygonal 3D models on top of detailed hand-drawn 2D bitmaps, the realistic animation was pretty unparalleled at the time. The way characters would turn and climb stairs and interact with the interactive parts of the environment and other 3D models was really quite something. Critics all praised the graphics, and it rightly won a whole bunch of awards for its visuals. Like, it might not look like much, but this was 1992, man. This was well before polygons were like a normalized thing. The crazy thing to me about this game is I'd always seen it on like YouTube videos and thought to myself, this looks like a goofy old thing that probably doesn't hold up at all because it looks like a bunch of RuneScape characters awkwardly wandering around on low-res backgrounds, but having finally played it, it actually sets its tone really well. Like, there's genuine atmosphere to this. The music and sound design is just outstanding, and the drawn-out opening cutscene entering the mansion has a very classic horror kind of feeling, which actually drew me into it all. Something about the simplicity of this too had me filling in blanks with my imagination, and the first time I saw a monster slowly creep into the room, it genuinely stressed me out quite a lot. Along with being a graphically groundbreaking game, Alone in the Dark delivered on being a solid horror game, which still pulls some clever moves to this day. It's impressive on all fronts.
Another World is a game that is remembered by everyone who played it, whether fondly or with frustration. This title has a staying power that lasts even to today, with a modern-day release on the Nintendo Switch in July of 2018. Originally released in 1991, Another World has a look that was unmatched by any of its predecessors, using
flat-shaded polygons
that evoke a paper-crafted experience in this highly cinematic world. Unlike most games at the time, Another World was developed over 2 years by a single developer with a small QA team from publisher Interplay. A good portion of that time was spent developing a proprietary animation sequencer with fantastic rotoscoped animations that were fluid and realistic, and moved at an incredible 20 frames per second. This game, when it was released in 1991, was one of the first truly cinematic experiences, taking inspiration from 1983's Dragon Lair, but adding that level of personalized gameplay that made it feel like it was your game. Created to run at 320 by 200, Another World was a perfect candidate for mobile game ports, and it showed up on several phones. In fact, it has basically been ported to every game system now, and while most people never found a mate or saw the ending in the Thunderdome, the first scene is something millions of people remember.
Comanche Maximum Overkill is often credited as the first commercial video game with a voxel-based engine, and it released all the way back in 1992. Developed by Nova Logic, who are much more well known for the Delta Force series, which also blew minds with its voxel graphics, Comanche is way ahead of its time. The way it works is super impressive but deceptively simple. It essentially draws vertical lines in based on a height map, and then it colors those lines using an image, or effectively a color map. There's a fantastic written piece on GitHub by a guy named Sebastian Mack who dives into how this game works, and I really like it because he uses all these GIFs, or GIFs if you rather, to demonstrate what's going on, and he even coded a web browser demo of a voxel engine. Do go and check out the link in the description later because it is pretty fascinating. Using the color maps, they were able to create really detailed terrain and even mapped on static shadows, which make it just that much more convincing. Just simple sprites to use for all the other objects in the environment, though there can be an impressive amount of them on screen at once, and obviously they limited the screen size and res to keep it all running, but it just feels years ahead of its time. I like how it has a bunch of camera angles to play with, and it controls and feels surprisingly smooth and tactile, but actually playing it is pretty chaotic. The AI are just shocking, and the missions are repetitive and unfair, making it more of a tech demo than a game, but what a tech demo it is. It's also the start of a 4-game series which had heaps of expansions. The final game, Comanche 4, released in 2001, and it's cool to see how far they came graphically in just 9 years.
Homeworld was a behemoth when it landed in 1999, a full 3D strategy game, culling experiences from StarCraft and Total Annihilation, but adding in 6 degrees of movement, and a Battlestar Galactica polish made Homeworld a game that truly set standards. The developers left out more diverse units and convoy routing in order to deliver the highest graphically impressive battles. And while it isn't graphical, the sound design for this game is simply beyond what most games try to deliver, even today, using thousands of small clips played in varying order to give each ship a unique sound for every unique action.
Awaiting assignment. Docking with mothership and awaiting orders. Nothing but gravel out here.
With this kind of presentation, it shouldn't surprise you that Homeworld was the top-rated PC game from 1999. Additionally, Homeworld was amongst a small selection of games that didn't lock you into the standard of SVGA's 800 by 600, but instead allowed for high resolutions, up to 1600 by 1200. And with the high polygon count for each individual ship, this was one of the prettiest titles to come out of the 90s. Flashy effects, particles, and glows all combined to lend itself to a battle simulator that evoked Star Wars better than any LucasArts game before it.
Jurassic Park Trespasser. This could be the most overly ambitious game ever made. It's known for biting off far more than it could chew and suffering because of it, but looking back to this 1998 oddity, there's no denying it was certainly very ahead of its time graphically and technically, even if it doesn't always quite land. So where to begin on everything this game is doing? For starters, it has a huge draw distance and huge levels for 98, which are densely populated with like foliage and trees, and it pulls this off by being one of the earliest games to have objects scale in as you get closer to them. This wireframe mode shows all the polygons in the scene, so the further away objects like the trees are just 2D sprites at this point, and as you get closer to them they turn into 3D models which swap into more complex models as you get closer. Of course, this results in extreme pop-in, but it's a trade-off, and if you actually want to play Trespasser, mods have since fixed this. On top of this, all the skeletal models don't use any hard-coded animations. Instead, the dinosaur's limbs and your arms are all generating their animations reactively. This often results in some weird glitching and just generally broken looking things, but again, it's quite amazing to see for a game this old. Trespasser is also the first game to use ragdoll physics, which is no small feat.
7. 3. Ow.
And speaking of physics, what Trespasser is most well remembered for is its extremely complex physics engine for the time. It's a game where you can pick up and throw and shoot objects and they'll all react accordingly with their own weights, and the levels are dense with objects, making the game feel a lot like a tech demo. You know when Half-Life 2 likes to show off its physics engine? Imagine that, but it's the whole game. I haven't mentioned a lot of the smaller things it does too, like Trespasser has a fairly interesting particle-based blood system, and it has pools of water that actually create ripples when you or other physics objects touch it. There's just so much going on with this game.
Trespasser was incredible to look at when it worked well, and it was a pioneer regardless of how memeable those innovations were. Having no HUD meant more immersion, which combined with its huge draw distance and massive worlds puts Trespasser on a level of technical spectacle that few other games would attempt to match for many years. That immersion led to gameplay experiences that were forgiving of the game's many flaws. I know, sitting here today, that Trespasser is a bad game. It's buggy and broken, the AI is only matched by the alien and colonial marines, making the danger no higher than fighting a wombat. And yet, I can't help but think fondly of my experience in Trespasser, stacking boxes on top of each other to find an alternative solution to a problem. A type of systemic design we wouldn't see fully fleshed out in games outside of the 0451 titles like Deus Ex, at least for many years.
And with that, we've covered 5 more graphically impressive 90s PC games. Big thanks to Moriarty from Crymore Gaming for helping me out on this one.
The interesting thing to me is that some of these games still live on today, like Homeworld, which was revived by Gearbox in 2015. If you'd like to hear more about Gearbox, its rise from working on Half-Life, and then follow me through the spiral to today, I have a 43-minute long video that discusses the entire history of the studio and its leader.
A link to that video and M's channel are in the description. I hope you enjoyed this video, which was a bit of a throwback to the old days on this channel. I hosted a poll recently to see if you guys were still down for the 5 graphically impressive videos, and for the most part, you are at least down for occasional videos, so it's likely that I still will make these occasionally, but I'm really enjoying the more deep dive reviewy kind of content that I've been up to lately, and apparently you guys are enjoying that too, so that will remain the focus for this channel for the time being. That's just if you're curious. So yeah, thanks for watching, and take it easy.